Hello, TrotCon! Welcome to Saturday night, or whatever time or day it happens to be, wherever you are. Is it tomorrow yet in Australia?
Mm.
It, it's it's 5 o'clock somewhere as well, but I don't know if it works like that. Just a thought. But anyway, hello, welcome to All That Glimmers, a Starlight Glimmer analysis part 2. My name is Ford Progress. You know me from the Keeping Friendship Magic project and so many other things. And I'm joined today by three lovely and talented co-hosts that I couldn't be more delighted to have to talk all about this light purple colored horse of magic. We'll start here to my left.
I'm Nova Rose. I'm a big Starlight fan.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeedy.
Is.
Returning for this discussion is Mr. Thoth Penswell of Rift Ponies. Don't I told you I will just replace you with the Starlight plushie and start giving you compliments.
This is my horse. This is my horse. My horse is amazing.
How do I drop him from the call? No. Okay, that works. This Starlight plushie already has a custom voice box in it, you know? The big new breakthrough game. Mm-hmm. You know, we haven't even gotten through intros yet. This is off to a great start. Now, all right, and joining us, new to this panel, is another great member of the Glimmer Gang. You may know him as Kyle Bush fan. Wait, it's Kyle Bush fan 51 fan 2. I knew I was gonna mess it up. I knew I was going to get the numbers wrong. But Taylor, thank you for joining us. Indeed. You know, I don't know. I think you guys all saw someone in the vendor hall. I think has a Princess Starlight Glimmer plushie this weekend. It was beautiful, but suffice to say, obviously, we're here to talk about Starlight Glimmer. If you saw our panel at Ponyville Cider Fest, this one's going to run a little bit different. We've decided to structure it a little bit differently so we're not just covering the same stuff. Because part of the thing we ran into last time is we have so much to talk about regarding this magical horse that we just didn't have enough time. So it's like, okay, how can we restructure this to get it going? So we've got an extra person for a new perspective. We've got a new structure to this. But let's cover a little bit what we've already talked about here so everybody kind of has a sense of where we've been. What's going on?
How odd.
Now they can.
I thought that this. Guess we're gonna have to mind this whole thing.
All right.
You can run it back. I can go get my blanket again.
They can hear you now. Okay, so let's restart this and let's go back here and here.
Let's do.
And down and okay. So thank you, Thoth, for joining us today.
Hi, it's me. I'm a talentless hack, and I'm one half of Rift Ponies, and the only reason I'm here is because I love to talk about... Wait, I need to go get the blanket again, but you know what? I don't care. This wonderful horse, because I love her, and I love talking about her, so that's why I'm here.
And yet again, thank you, Taylor, for joining us.
Yes, thank you guys so much again for letting me come on board with this crazy journey, and again, talking about why we're here for Best Waifu, of course.
Yes, indeed. So, all right, let's, like I said, let's talk a little bit about where we've been before. So, the last time let's go back. last time we presented this panel here, we kind of looked at a kind of chronological sense of Starlight coming onto the series and what she meant, and how she kind of shook up the status quo of the series. That she seemed to represent the antithesis to what our main characters was representing. And a common theme we discussed is kind of her role as being the one to question the status quo, the one to question the norm of what's going on in the throughout what the main six are going through, and in particular Twilight. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about her coming and staying as a main character from season 6 on. How the fandom, we were, I think, a little wary as a fandom at first, and then we got to see some episodes, and the love just poured out for this pony.
Eventually.
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 Yeah.
All in good time it did.
I think the level of merchandise on the screen featuring Starlight is a indication.
Merchandising.
Man,
merchandising.
I've got. That's where the real money's made. Thanks, Mel Brooks. It's funny because
Glam the flamethrower. No.
Kids love that one. I do. Hey, speaking of which, remember when Glam murdered Discord? Just as an aside.
Yes.
I'm not saying that as a joke.
No. We've had to watch a lot of Glam episodes in preparation for this panel.
Okay, really quick. Matter of principles. When she was interim principal at the School of Friendship, she shoots this big laser at Discord, and it is implied later that it is his ghost haunting the school. What that says to me is that she actually murdered him. Just saying.
How is this supposed to lend into the rest of the panel? You're not setting me up.
We'll figure it out. Figure it out. But what I was gonna say is that you're talking about merchandising. Like, this is only like a quarter of it. The stuff that I've shown thus far. So don't ask me to pull my entire collection out. That's going to be a headache.
Not a Starlight mug. I'm sorry, but we have a Starlight plush.
You need to get
with custom sounds.
You need to get your Glimmer game on.
Seriously.
Glimmer game.
I know.
Trademark.
I know. Hey, you know what? If every pony wants to send us some Glimmer stuff or Hearthswarming, I won't complain. I'm fine with that. So, but
don't tempt me.
Let's get on with our discussion here, because what we want to do is, as much as we all appreciate this character, we really kind of want to analyze what we can learn from her and what she is meant to the series and to us. And the way we decided to approach it for this panel here is to take it in the sense of detailing kind of the way that Starlight goes through her friendship lessons in the series. So first we want to talk about Starlight and making friends. And we're going to talk about a couple different things here, but the one I started with here was kind of the first real, genuine friendship problem challenge she had to face was reconnecting, and that is making friends with some pony she knew when she was a filly, and being able to reconnect with Sunburst. And it definitely posed, I think, a real challenge that I think some of us can really home in on, of reconnecting with people you haven't seen for years, and this fear of, am I still going to work with them? Am I still compatible with them? What are they like now? Can I make a friend now, all these years later?
I mean, that's a thing I think about constantly when I think about where I'm at currently in life. And I think about friends from my past and my childhood and all that, high school, college, middle school, whatever. And I think to myself, like, I should probably interact with them at some point, but similar to Starlight's concerns, it's like, would we even function? Would someone from middle school, high school tolerate, this? Would they tolerate, But no, that's going off the last panel. That's what makes Starlight such a compelling character, is that she goes through really real problems. Like, that's great. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, a lot of things that Starlight goes through are actually, I can back up what Thoth was saying, is that, a lot of things that she has gone through are some things I personally have gone through, like trying to, reconnect with friends or trying to establish a new friendship or trying to learn something new that may be out of my comfort zone. And I've been stuck with this crutch for such a long time that I can't even get off of it. And, that's why I was so relatable to her because, of everything I've gone through in my personal life, just personally.
Oh, definitely. I think that's something I think probably is a common thread for all of us.
I can go say that the all bottled up episode is so relatable.
Oh, we're gonna get there. That's coming up. So there is a hesitation we see in making a friend in this episode in the Crystal Link here, of doing it because she feels she has to. There's an interesting point about the conversation that they're having over tea, where essentially Sunburst looks to Starlight and says, "So the Princess of Friendship thinks that you and I should make friends with each other." And Starlight's kind of like, yeah, crazy, right? And seeing this thing about, like, there's that real intense fear and this kind of like, I'm only doing this because I have to in that moment. And it's very real seeing the expressions on her face and how she tries to put it off. Because I know for myself, especially when I was younger, I was a very huge procrastinator for things that would make me uncomfortable. And it's something I still suffer with because I do suffer from generalized anxiety disorder. So when I see the genuine anxiety and fear that Starlight goes through about trying to approach Sunburst in this episode, and a number of things that we see from her later on, I connect with that because I've had experiences in my past where I think about these things and I'm like, I don't know if I can reconnect with people. And I have that real fear, and it's kept me from picking up the phone and reaching out to people.
And it adds on to that level of the level of intrigue and her clear discomfort at the idea of applying because the thing is that we're shown immediately, if I'm recalling this correctly, is at the beginning of the crystalling, it's shown that Starlight gets all of the nitty gritty of the magic and the book smarts, all of that. She's great with that.
Mm-hmm.
But putting all of that into practice and stepping out of that comfort zone that she kind of has at that point, which is doing this thing that initially set her on this path that she went on and is working back from, that's what adds a whole other layer to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Which at that point sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and at that point at the start of season 6, that was what made it kind of the perfect jumping off point for her arc, was right after season 5, where even me as a person was kind of concerned about what her role was and how she'd be incorporated into the show as a part of the cast. It was the perfect way to immediately dive into that character. I would really be I would just be insanely intrigued to hear how they went about plotting out that character arc. Just writing room, all of that.
It had to be interesting because you got to kind of figure that when they wrote season 5, they knew it was inevitable. So you kind of wonder of how many of those building blocks were in place when they planned out season 5, episode 1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to say. I mean, I'd be mad curious to ask some more staffers about this type of thing, because it's a really interesting thing about the process of how much of it is a proactive plan and how much of it is a reactive force. So we talked about, obviously, the reconnecting and the crystalling, but we have to talk about making relationships where it's a fresh start. And with Starlight, it was awfully interesting. I've done panels, Keeping Friendship Magic panels in the past, where I've talked about how we make friends and what lends us more to make certain friends over others. And a lot of things within it have to deal with proximity and having similar, similarities, things that you can connect over. And we see that in an interesting variety of ways with Starlight here. The obvious first one we can talk about is Trixie with
Right.
in No Second Prances, and about the fact that they connect over the fact that both of them were kind of quote unquote reformed villains, where they each have a past, and that's something unique that they share.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of even before that realization of how deep that level goes. That moment at the spa for them, when they're just kind of having that conversation about how they feel about being in Ponyville. Like, neither of them realizes to the extent what the other pony has done. But they just kind of connect in that moment. And there's something kind of beautiful about that what it says about how you can make friendships.
Yeah, and I think we'll go into it as we go here. But that is the key thing about every friendship that Starlight makes as a character. I feel like there's always this tiny, and I guess it speaks. Forward would know because he's the social scientist, but I feel like each of the relationships that Starlight forms throughout the show, each of these really critical ones that we'll talk about at least, always has this tiny kernel that is like bonds the two and is like, this is the thing that brings them together. This is the thing that that is like the glue. They could have differences, which they explore and will explore in certain episodes where there are clear differences in these characters, but there is always that tiny piece that keeps them together at the heart of it and at the heart of the friendship she has. And as you said, in the case of Trixie and Starlight, it's sorry, Taylor. And with the case of Trixie and Starlight, it's that past that then rolls into figuring out that you figure out the rest of their dynamic.
Right. And thinking back now, when Trixie was first introduced to the series, she was this evil magician that not a lot of ponies really liked her at the time, and she's had to go through all of this trying to realize, oh, geez, I'm a bad person. So then, Starlight then goes through her villain phase, and then when the two of them start meeting up and talking about their similarities and differences, that's where it kind of connected with the two of them. So I kind of now understand why the two of them were better friends than they were, as when they were villains. So, it just made sense to me why two villains that were, had to go through all these different scenarios and then end up as best friends. It's kind of a small world if you really think about it.
You know what's really interesting to think about that just came across my mind is that Starlight and Trixie would never have gotten along in their villain selves because their goals were pretty much polar opposite. Starlight was all about equality and bringing everybody down to this lower level. And Trixie was, I am the best. I am a showman. I want to show off my talents. Quite the opposite. So what's really... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, no, I was going to piggyback off that point. I was going to say it's, again, like the thing we talked about last panel. I hate to keep referring to last panel because then that requires all the viewers out there to watch the first one. But
oh no, people have to go to my YouTube
is, again,
channel?
That element of the unique...
Oh, horrifying.
Please subscribe.
What's the URL for that YouTube channel?
See, the problem is it has a bad URL because I need more subscribers so I can get a custom.
But it's again that element of that I talked about last time, which was the element of the unique individuality against Starlight's initial emphasis when we meet her on the not unique, but the effort of the collective of everyone. It's pushing down on that being a unique individual and being the best at what you do. Everyone can be equally best. That is interesting. I've never thought about that actually. That's really great.
It's an interesting duality in their relationship, and granted, you kind
Yin
of
and yang.
you need that because appreciating differences is such an important thing. Because trust me, like not even just like in friendships and relationships, we aren't all the same. There's plenty of places in which
I was gonna say,
we differ.
yeah, I was gonna say
Mhm.
all the really close friendships I have in the fandom, we are very different people. Even me and Ace, we're very different people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Me and my girlfriend, very different people. She did one panel with me years ago. She has no interest to ever do panels. No interest. She'd rather watch me embarrass myself on stage. Um, and uh, and and in that same breath, all of the friendships that Starlight has, those are all very different people from who Starlight is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's little similarities, that little kernel I talked about earlier, but like Trixie, Sunburst, Maud, we'll all talk about that obviously as we go along, but those are all, if you pick apart at it, very different characters than Starlight is.
Mhm.
So there you go.
You know, you mentioned Maud. I would love to transition this into her meeting Maud. There's something about the Rock Solid Friendship episode and her making friends with Maud that was very unique, I feel, from, say, the initial Maud Pie episode when we first met Maud in season 4, where that episode was very much all of the, 5 out of the 6 main 6 um, going very much like, I don't get this pony. I don't understand her. She's so weird. And with Starlight, you never really get that. She doesn't react. Yeah, Maud is a very unique pony. It would be likely for anybody to say that. But Starlight never really has that reaction. And I feel like that in and of itself, that openness to seeing, what's there without stereotyping or placing, sweeping it under the rug type of thing, kind of allows for so much more.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus
And
heights.
that does say a lot. That does say a lot that she ends up as friends with Maud when the main 6 was completely like, we don't understand this person.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get it. And eventually that is kind of the relationship as it goes along through the rest of the series, where they're friends with her, but it's only in a way that she's the sister of one of our best friends. So it's like by
Right. Of
proxy.
course.
Starlight becomes friends with her, and it all again comes from this tiny little thing where it's like, oh, they both like kites. So now they hang out and they figure out that they're pretty compatible as friends. It just takes that one piece. Totally different characters, but one little thing, it can make a friendship. And that's what's great about the relationships that Starlight has been. And that's what makes her a great dynamic with so many different characters that we see throughout the show.
Yeah, if you had to tell me that, Maud would end up being friends with Starlight, you would have been kidding yourself. But somehow or another, it just worked, and somehow it takes like two unique personalities to actually become friends, and that's what Starlight and Maud had in that episode, which kind of surprised a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, I want to move on to this next section here that I labeled friendship with baggage. And this gets interesting because a lot of what we want to talk about here is Starlight's relationship with the rest of the main 6. And as Thoth just mentioned, it's very different. Her relationship with the main 6, well, they're friends, but their friendships are definitely different, I would say, than Starlight's friendships with, say, Trixie or Maud or Sunburst here. And
Mm-hmm.
making friends with them was interesting. And I think a lot of that is from the type of character she is versus the type of characters the main 6 were. And I know this is something you've talked about a lot, about that kind of how they were built and this archetypal versus non-archetypal basis for the characters.
Mm.
Hmm.
So, I have a brief clip here. We can kind of look into it here. So, brief clip from the series.
I thought if I just
Hold the
kept wowing you with my magical abilities, you might just not notice?
Baking a cake freaks you out?
Yes, baking a cake, sewing, all of it. What if I was bad at it? I didn't want to be a disappointment to any pony, and I ended up being a disappointment to every pony.
Starlight, do you think any pony cares if you can bake a cake?
But the lesson...
Was to get to know Pinkie Pie better by doing something she loves. It was a friendship lesson, not a baking lesson.
Oh. You know, I think I might have missed the point here.
Told ya.
So now what?
Now it's time for a pretty advanced friendship lesson. It's called apologizing.
So every little thing she does, and this is a thing we talked about Starlight having magic as her crutch. And I think all of us can kind of have this thing of like, we have this crutch that we go to in these situations. Like, for her, it's magic. Like, she wants to solve problems with magic instead of getting to the awkward social aspects of it. And I think we've all had that where there's no, like, we'll try our best to find another way to deal with a problem that doesn't involve us getting into direct interaction with people.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to continue, sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, like, there's, well, I'll let you go ahead, and I got my point.
No, yeah, you're good. I was going to say, every little thing she does is such a critical episode in exploring not only kind of, it's a very key moment in Starlight learning the values of friendship, obviously, of course. But I think it's also really telling in that, as we were saying, and I think we said it last time too, at the end a little bit, but the friendship between Starlight and the main six, minus Twilight, because that's a totally different relationship. That's student-teacher. That's clearly a different thing. She's kind of just friends with her by association, really, with the main six. A lot of people ask why there weren't any Starlight main six episode. Like, why wasn't there an episode where Starlight was paired with a member of the main six and they went off and did some kind of adventure? And I think there's a very clear reason for that, because number one, she has her own circle of friends that she has multiple episodes that center around that. And the second thing is that that relationship is very different. She only really knows them because they happen to be friends with the person who is helping re-educate and reform her and teach her. And in every little thing she does, they kind of explore that to a point where she literally brainwashes them. And by the end of it, and I think I pointed this out last time, they show that they very clearly are not willing to immediately forgive that. And that's different for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because Starlight, because I love the character, but I love the character because she can mess up. And she messes up big time in that. She messes up big time in that episode. But that's great, and that makes it relatable because it's a relatable problem. And to see, you love a character more. I can't remember who said this, but you love, it might have been screenwriters of the writer's room at Pixar. You love a character more for how they fail and eventually succeed instead of how they succeed. Mm-hmm. I'm probably paraphrasing a little bit, but there's always that argument. I think we went into it last time about Mary Sue's and how Starlight is a Mary Sue. Starlight's not a Mary Sue. There's a couple of instances immediately in season 6 that just completely destroy that argument because she constantly messes up. Brainwashing your best friend's friends and them not forgiving you, I would say that's a fair mess up.
I think that's a big thing, though, is, like, it's really hard to get over stigma, where, like, she created a stigma around her that I think Twilight is able to go kind of put that aside to help her grow and see her grow, whereas the main six kind of seem more like wary.
Mm-hmm. You know, and it's interesting because there's so many different takes within that, because we talked a little bit about Spike last time and about how Spike and Starlight kind of have this interesting relationship, because Spike is kind of like, he's part of the main cast, but he's kind of separate from it in very much the same way that Starlight is, where they kind of have that moment where they can have those asides where they can talk about things that are going on and have a similar like commonality within that.
There's also an interesting thing with Spike is he didn't go with them to the village.
This is true.
So he doesn't
That is
have
true.
that
That's
experience.
very true.
But it's like the Crystaling, she's with Spike a lot. She's with Spike a lot in Shadowplay. And it's very much it's very interesting to see that dynamic between the two of them.
And to go even further on it, we talked about this. I'm not sure if we talked about it last time or we've talked about it in the interim, but in the very few episodes where there's extended interaction between Starlight and one of the main six, specific example I'm thinking of is Rock Solid Friendship. Her and Pinkie Pie. Usually, if it was any other of the main six, they would tolerate Pinkie's, stress and anxiety over this whole thing with kind of just like, well, it's Pinkie, so we're gonna have to deal with it the way we usually do in the last 6-7 seasons. Starlight instead comes right out and says what she's thinking and does not sugarcoat it. I can't remember the exact words, but I just remember it was like, I remember thinking to myself watching that episode, I was like, she just said it. She just didn't put up with the usual main six sort of way with dealing with it. And she was just, no, I'm just going to tell you what you're doing. And people always talk about how, Applejack's the element of honesty and everything, and how, then that means that she's blunt or blurts something out. Applejack is honest, Starlight is blunt, and that's great. She's blunt, and we'll talk about how she's impulsive as well, but that comes with it. She, multiple times in the show, she will just go, yeah, everyone else will be dancing, especially the main six, will be dancing around a certain point in the usual way. Starlight will just go, yeah, this is what I think. What you're doing is weird. This is what I want to do. This is what I think. And that's, again, that's interesting. And as I talked about last time, that's a different dynamic. And that was a dynamic that was needed on the show, I think.
Yeah, what's interesting about her is that, you know what? She is like a character that will just say whatever's on her mind, and she has no regrets. I mean, for example, like there was one episode like that was like in season 8 or 9, and where Twilight is like the beginning of the season premiere, and like trying to get Twilight to calm down and learn about the rule books. She gets out the rule book and Jen just slams it into the water.
Yeets it away.
Like just yeeted it away.
That's
like
the one
you know
Forward likes.
Twilight, stop doing all the rules and just go with your gut. I mean, that's what I loved about her. Like, you know what? There are no rules. You control the school. You know what you're doing. Do it.
And that is, to me, the thing that makes Starlight such a fun character when it comes to her dynamic with other characters is there are certain things that she does in the show. We'll talk about some of those things later because I know what's coming in the presentation. Spoilers. But she will do things, and you'll see as we're talking about it, she as a character will do things that no other character in the show would possibly ever think of doing. And that's so unique and so critical, to me at least. There's that impulsiveness, that bluntness, and it gets her into trouble a lot of times. Like brainwashing your friends, that'll get you in trouble. But it also works to her advantage as a character as well. So,
and this has really brought us directly into our next segment, which is about maintaining friendships. It's like, now you have friends. What happens when they gets challenged? And we've already talked about some of this, about dealing with the difficulties that will inevitably come up because we're all human, we all have differences, even as similar as we are to our friends. You know, Bros and I have differences. We have difficulties dealing with each other sometimes. I love you,
Love you too.
but oh, sometimes I'm sure she just wants to whack off and hit me. I know it.
Any sentence that begins with "I love you," but is never destined to end well.
Anyway, so the background on this is from Uncommon Bond, which was very interesting. It was an episode I hadn't watched in a while, and I went back and rewatched it in preparation for this panel, and it's really interesting to see Starlight in this episode kind of, I mean, I think it's fair to say overreact to the bond between Starlight and or not Starlight, I'm sorry, Sunburst and Twilight. And it bleeds, I'm going to go right to my next bullet point, is a lot of what we see with Starlight, especially initially in episodes like Uncommon Bond, you see this question of herself of like, am I even compatible with these people? Why am I friends with them? Like, are they even really my friend? Or are they just better off without me?
Right, and in with someone like a character like her, where this is something that she's just barely at that point, even she's barely learning how this works. Having that kind of really advanced problem, especially in the previous clip where it's an advanced friendship problem, dealing with that sort of thing where you're like, am I even compatible with my friends? And like, are my friends compatible? Are they more compatible than I am with them? Should I even be friends with them? That's complex. That's really complex. And that's why I love her being a character on the show, because they can explore that kind of thing. And it's so easy for them to. And I think that particular episode is really slept on in regards to the themes it explores, at least.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it, I don't know.
There's always going to be people who connect with others in certain ways that you won't connect with them. And that was the big thing we saw with this, is what Twilight and Sunburst had in common was strong in and of that, you know, that moment, but that doesn't make an entire friendship. And you can build your relationship on different qualities and still be just as valid of a friend as somebody else who seems like they might have quote unquote more in common with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely evident from the way that she kind of misunderstands the minutia of her and Sunburst's relationship, because her immediate, going back to her crutch with magic, rather than kind of relating with him on other levels as friends and seeing, like, you know, appealing to, what are you interested in now? Instead, she goes to, let's do this thing. I'm going to magically enhance us to do this thing that we did as kids, because this is the only thing that I know that we work at.
Mm-hmm.
When we were kids, I'm going to turn us into kids. I won't go into that. That's a whole other thing. I'm going to turn us back into kids so we can play this game when we were kids. And that's her understanding at that point. And eventually we obviously, and that's what's great about her progression throughout the show, is that we see her progress past that. But that is an interesting element to it too. And it kind of shows what her understanding of it is at that point, where it is in the middle of that episode and her struggle with it, and where it ends up at the end of it.
Definitely. And again, you brought it up, we see the magic as a crutch again. It's the thing, you know, but what that is, it's very human. It's we as humans, we like to kind of stick with what we know and go back to kind of a sense of homeostasis, almost, of we're back to our resting position. We're back to what we know and what we're comfortable with, and that's what we're going to go with.
it's why people stay, in jobs they don't like for years. It's why they stay in a routine and prefer a routine, and why they get really, really upset if they get thrown out of that routine and have to develop a new one because it's a comfort zone.
Change
And
is scary.
Starlight's comfort zone is magic.
Yeah.
You know.
Change is scary. Change is stressful, but it's also necessary.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing.
Exactly. That's
I
life.
mean, and change is not necessarily bad. When I was growing up, I always had this routine I had every day. And as I was growing up, my routine started changing and it made me uncomfortable. But at the same time, it made me realize that, maybe if I can break this habit, maybe I can start exploring myself even more. And I think that's what Starlight has had to go through throughout the whole series is, you know, I may have been crutched with magic most of my life, but I got to lean away from that because that's not going to build me a very strong friendship with somebody. And so that's why she's had to kind of lean away from magic throughout the series. So I kind of find that interesting, but it's also relatable to myself as well.
Mm-hmm. So I have my next bullet point that we put on here was about appreciating differences, and this just goes right along with what we were just talking about here, is that sense of just because you have different interests than me doesn't mean that we're not friends. Or doesn't mean that our friendship is less valid. And we find that with her and Sunburst. We find that with her and Trixie when they have disagreements and arguments, and they don't see eye to eye. Obviously, the On the Road to Friendship, the road trip episode is a clear pivotal Starlight Trixie moment.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Rose and I have had discussions about this where there's certain situations that really challenge friendships, and road trip can be one of them. Another one, like if you're like, let's say you move in and share like an apartment or a house with a friend, and you're living with a friend, that can really put strains and stresses on your relationship that you never would have seen coming otherwise. So there's definitely something to like knowing the limits of what you can handle and being able to approach that in a sensible manner. Trying to think if I go right into the clip or if I have another one. Nope, we're gonna go in the clip.
What are you two doing?
Gonna go right into the clip.
Taking a stand by lying down. Not that you care, wagon trader aware.
Trixie, I came back to apologize. I should never have traded away the wagon. It wasn't mine to trade. It belongs to my friend.
If you truly were friends, I suppose I'd be honor bound to reverse the trade.
Okay, fine. We're friends. Best friends who share a deep bond but weren't prepared for the emotional challenges of traveling. Happy?
I'm still unconvinced.
Magic? Magic? Puff of smoke! One wave your hooves and tell a little joke!
That was the worst friendship chant I have ever heard. And you two were clearly making it up as you went. But only true friends would be willing to act so ridiculous for one another.
There's a few things to unpack there with that episode.
Quite a bit.
Number one, they're adorable. That's the
that friendship chant. I insisted that go in the clip. By the way, it was going in.
There you go. I noticed that cut as a video editor. I know you needed to include that.
Mm-hmm. You just need.
Or you can also say an attempt was made in that whole chant.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like he says about like if you guys didn't care, you wouldn't have done something this ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true.
But a big thing here that gets to be another theme throughout the series, and we've danced around it a little so far, is this idea of respecting boundaries as something Starlight has had to learn over the series. Because offering up your friend's wagon like that is obviously a big, violation of someone else's boundaries.
Someone mentioned it in chat earlier. I have been watching the chat just to let all
Thank
of you
you.
who are in the chat know. No, not a problem.
I can't see it, so thank you very much.
Two
Yeah, I
monitors.
saw
You
it as
know,
well.
I'm Madam Web over here.
I have two monitors as well, but
but-
both of them are running the panel.
There you go. See, I've got an open one. But someone remarked that they were really unhappy with this decision by Starlight to do this really impulsive thing that she did. And I don't think there's any world where it's depicted where she was correct in doing that. I think that was a very wrong thing for her to do. At the same time, it plays into that theme we were talking about of her being really impulsive. She'll do things with magic or do things that immediately gratify, immediately solve what she perceives to be the problem. And she does have to learn over time that she needs to account for other people's feelings, other people's experience. It's a thing that she learns over time, and this one is, as you said, it's critical. And by the end of it, she's like, yeah, I didn't have the right to do that. She didn't think of it at first because what she was thinking was, well, I'm just going to solve this problem for us. And I know a lot of people, when the episode came out and still feel this way, is that this was this ultimate betrayal of her to do this and that it was a terrible thing. And it's, to me, as someone who really loves their character and loves to analyze it, yes, it's extremely, I'll avoid using French, it's an extremely cruddy thing to do to a friend. But and even under her understanding of Trixie constantly seeing the cart as a hindrance, she should have accounted for the fact that there is history there. But she eventually learns that you need to account for your friend's feeling and you need to account for things before you make a decision like that. And she's learned this many times as the series has progressed. And eventually that results in, she can make those decisions as we move into the end of season 8, into season 9, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I know another big one, and you've brought this up in our meetings, is All Bottled Up. And you mentioned it earlier. Is about that, I don't know if you want to touch upon it more, but like that kind of that, I feel like that's something we all experience, is that like somebody does something and you want to say something, but you also don't want to hurt them and you don't want to overreact.
It's really easy to do. It's because you don't want to see your friends sad, so it's like it's easier in quotes to just ignore your feelings, and it's like that's an extremely unhealthy thing to do.
And that's
fallen into
shown
that
in a very
trap.
obvious way in that episode. I think that there's something we're kind of dancing around, and it's something I've talked about with, I think, a big problem we have in society in general and in this world is we tend to a lot of times find simple solutions to problems that are effectively band-aids on the situation, that eventually those band-aids will fall off and we still have to we haven't dealt with the root cause yet of the issue. And I think that's a thing with Starlight until more towards the end, is her character had this tendency to kind of bandage things with magic and otherwise, instead of really getting down to the root problem until she really had to. And it's what makes her more quote unquote human. It makes why we relate to her more, because I think that's something so many of us do. Your brain wants to find the quick, easy solutions. It's only natural. But to really get down and nitty gritty and deal with the problems we have, sometimes we have to really get down to the root, really dig in there.
Not to get too real, but we've been dealing with that all of 2020.
Right.
People wanting to get to the easiest solution, and then you learn it's not that simple. There's a lot more you have to do.
Yep.
So 2020, everyone in 2020, take a hint from Starlight Glimmer. I don't know what that means. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
All right, chat. You know what you need to do. So
Don't do that. Don't do it.
so we've talked about her making friends. We talked about her maintaining her friendships and the lessons she's learned. And the last big one here that I want to talk about is assisting other friendships and using what she's learned to help others. And I think the biggest thing here is that she tends to provide a different perspective, and that's in lieu to things we've already talked about, where her coming into the series when she did, in the way she did, and being a reformed villain gives her a unique perspective where, and I'll defer to you on this too, is what you said about how her tendency to think outside the box.
Like, yeah, she has some very interesting solutions to problems. Like, I know World Problem, which I think we get into later, is I mean, it's a solution because it kind of allows her friends to see things in perspectives that they normally wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she literally provided a new perspective. It is, like I said last time, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but she provided a new perspective not only in that friend group and was constantly a unique outside the box perspective, but she was also an entirely different look on the franchise itself. And that's so critical, and that's why she's great to analyze. You know, that's why we can do 2 whole panels about this character, you know.
I want to talk about shadow play some here because this is an interesting thing because we talk about this different perspective, but this is one of those areas where it's not thinking outside the box. Honestly, Starlight is the one in this episode who goes, "It's a friendship problem." She's going back and trying to dig to get the point across to the main 6 of, like, hey, remember these 7 past seasons where everything is a friendship problem? Maybe this is a friendship problem. And there's a critical moment where Starlight says to Twilight, and I don't have the exact quote, I forgot to get it, so I'm going to be paraphrasing, but it's where Twilight is so kind of awestruck with Star Swirl that she kind of just keeps deferring to him, even though Starlight is making really good points. Where Starlight looks at her and goes, "It's a good thing your mentor wasn't around when you met me, because you might have just written me off too."
Yeah.
And I know that's not
Again,
the exact quote, but that's essentially what she says.
And that's that unique sense about her character, is that it openly challenges not only Twilight at certain points throughout the series, but also like Star Swirl the Bearded, which up until that point was like this mythic character. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe, and it has that perspective come in of, yeah, well, maybe he's not right. Maybe this isn't the way to deal with it.
It's just that I think it's the thing of, like, it's not that he's not great. It's just that he's not wow, great and powerful. I went for
you did it.
Like,
you did it, everybody. You did it.
He's it's not that he's not great. It's not that he's not powerful, but he's fallible. And like we always saw from Star Swirl, like anytime he was referenced, it was this great magic feat he achieved. But it was never really said that any of his great feats were due to friendship solving, or anything like that. He never, like the elements of harmony were tied to Luna and Celestia before the main 6. Granted, the tree came from the pillars and all that, and we could analyze that to death. That's another panel. Don't get it twisted.
Out of these.
After working with Ellie and Giles as much, I am all open to doing a pillars panel with those people. Get in the chat, let them know. No.
Yeah. People.
But there's, it's that different perspective that everyone probably should have seen the entire time. But it took Starlight being in the position she was to make everyone see that. So, definitely a great thing here. And then the next bullet point I had was about, we get to see with Starlight this interesting sense of learning through teaching. And this is obviously bigger in the last 2 seasons in her role as a guidance counselor at the school, which, holy crap, is Starlight the perfect choice for a guidance counselor. I'm pretty certain when we saw the season 8 premiere, I said that exact thing. I'm like, this makes so much sense. That she gets put into a role where she's still learning, but she's far enough along that she can teach. And I can say this from just life experience. Sometimes the best way to learn is to teach. I remember, I'm going to go back a while here, but when I was in high school, we won't discuss what year that was, but when I was in high school back in the day, I had this great psychology class, and for extra credit, we could do a thing where we taught like a specific lesson from the course to our parents, and they would take a quiz, and if they scored well enough on the quiz, we would get extra credit for teaching the lesson to somebody else. I learned that lesson so well from teaching it and explaining it, and seeing it with Starlight now, it's like this makes sense, because it makes her have to think and develop more. And everything we get to see from her in season 9, especially in, student council in season 9, is one of my favorite episodes of the entire freaking series. Where she has to learn that lesson about, like, now that she's in this position and she really wants to try hard, but needs to know about her own boundaries. We talked earlier about needing to learn about boundaries. She had to first learn about boundaries with others, then now she has to learn about her own boundaries. Sorry, I just went on a whole rant. But
You're good.
You're good, Ford.
But that's definitely a thing that is really interesting. And it is the kind of the crux of the show, where Celestia was the teacher who taught Twilight, and then Twilight became a princess, and Twilight becomes the teacher to teach Starlight. But Twilight's still learning lessons from teaching Starlight, and then Starlight becomes a teacher to teach students while she's still learning lessons. The cycle continues. Master and apprentice.
Yeah.
Star Wars fans, get in the chat. No.
It's like, to quote George Lucas, it's like poetry, sort of, it rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I will also quote him again and say, we need to get Jar Jar. Jar Jar is the key to all of this. We need to get him working. Because he's a funnier character than we've had.
Not remember, do we have till 7:30 or 7:45?
45, apparently. I just looked at the schedule.
Fantastic. So we can actually
45,
finish this
yeah.
on time. We've got about 15 minutes left, so this is great. So we'll get to the clips that we got for this section.
What have you done?
I went with my gut.
Switch out cutie marks back this instant.
My apologies, Your Majesties, but I can't, even if I wanted to. This spell lasts 24 hours. It may have been extreme, but I think it's still a good idea.
What?
You said it yourselves. Neither of you believes your sister knows how hard it is to be you. So this is your chance to prove it. This was real. Oh, or was it not real? And this just happened now and not in my dream? I'm so confused.
It's all real. It was the right call, going with your gut.
The map was wise to send you, Starlight. No pony else would have been so bold as to do what you did.
That's a nice way of saying I came dangerously close to messing everything up.
It was just what we needed. The experience has made us closer than ever.
So, well, okay, we'll keep the in conclusion slide up. We're getting there, but let's review it.
She's so adorable when she done goofed. It's great.
We've talked about this a little bit, but about how the fact that while her boldness and her impulsiveness has gotten her in a lot of trouble, there's something about it that still is a character trait that shouldn't be just brushed off. She has the wherewithal to trust her gut and go with it in times, and that is needed at times. We can't always analyze everything to depth. Sometimes we need to go with our gut, and sometimes it doesn't go 100% the way we want to, but then we just have to adapt and deal with it. And that's what we see with Starlight.
It's essentially a gamble. Either it works or it doesn't. You just don't know unless you try.
Mm-hmm. And let's face it, life is full of gambles.
Starlight takes a lot of gambles. She epitomizes that. That's great.
She's a very high risk, high reward type pony, and I appreciate that.
Indeed, and there's so many ways you can live your life, and Starlight doesn't have to be the epitome for everybody or anything. But I think that there's something about her character that just naturally speaks to all of us in a way of more of a classical sense of a hero, I would say, where if you go back and you read mythology and such, your classical heroes were not this perfect, put them up on a pedestal characters. They were flawed individuals who you would argue at times if they were doing the right thing. And I feel like Starlight partially embodies that sense of she's flawed, she's going to mess things up, but she does have her heart in the right place at the end of the day, even though it took some development to get her to there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said before, and I still hold this to be a very evident truth in screenwriting and characterization. You love a character more when you see them fail and then eventually succeed, rather than just watching them succeed. If a character succeeded every time, they wouldn't be an interesting character. Starlight makes plenty of mistakes throughout the series, but I think that's what makes a lot of people love her, is that, as I just pointed out before at the end of this clip, she does done goof plenty of times, but she also finds ways to get out of that and figures out ways to solve problems. And that's what makes her, contrary to what the show and the title of the show and what she is, that's what makes her really human. And that's what makes her a really incredible character to follow. And in my opinion, that's why she still to me resonates as a character beyond all of the meme images and all the art. Although I love that, don't get me wrong, I'm wearing it, but just her character in general is what really draws me to just love that. She's a really incredible character when you dive deep into it, which we've been doing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I kind of want to just leave this open here and give everybody a chance to say kind of anything you want to in conclusion about about Starlight, or about just like her character, what she means to you, anything that we haven't covered you want to discuss. Taylor, we'll start with you.
All right. Yeah, I know I haven't got to say this much during the panel. I apologize, but one thing that I resonate, and I'm going to piggyback off a thought here, is you would rather see a character make mistakes and then realize their mistakes and improve upon themselves. That's what makes you a better human being. And I get joked on all the time that, oh, you just like Starlight because of who she is. Technically, yes, but what she has gone through in a lot of the series is what I personally went through in a personal life. Now, granted, I didn't enslave a whole village, so let's be clear on that one. But,
okay,
but
my bets were on you. What you did?
No, it was just, I was a kid that just wasn't sure what he was doing in life and where he was going to fit in. I didn't fit in anywhere during my early days as a kid. And when I found the show and then I discovered Starlight, it dawned on me like, oh my God, she was gone through the same exact things I went through as a kid. Like, I had trouble finding friendship. I had trouble making friends because I was so shy. But then, I've watched the show pretty much from 1 to 9. And all the lessons that I've learned from everything has made me a better person. And the person that I am today is because of her. I wouldn't be the person I am today without Starlight. And, that's why I resonate so much with her.
Absolutely. Rose, would you like to make any final conclusions, remarks? Wow, I can word good. Yeah, I'll stop talking now.
Starlight is a very, very relatable character, especially for me, whether it be bottling up her feelings or just making really dumb, high risk, compulsive like mistakes constantly. Like that really resonates with me. So Starlight is best horse for me.
Definitely. And Thoth, the floor is yours.
I mean, all of the sentiments that have been expressed, I definitely share. Is that I feel like she's such a very just kind of tangible character, especially at a point where we talked about this last time. The show needed a character like that provided a different dynamic, and what we got from the first 5 seasons, and what we got was a character that makes very different decisions than what the main cast would do, but also has clear flaws. We watch them make mistakes as they go, kind of like why a lot of people fell in love with Twilight's character at the start. Starlight had a similar character track where we watch her make mistakes. We watch her go from a character that has no interest in these values that the series and the franchise so loudly promotes, and she sort of becomes a part of that, but also still has a flair to herself that is so different from the main six, from the main cast that we've grown so accustomed to. So because she's so unique, because she's so impulsive, because she's so this, that, the other, and maybe a little bit because she's so adorable, and so it lends herself so easily to artwork and plushies and merchandise because I look good in purple. No, I don't. But so many of that, I think, is why why her character resonates with so many people. That fallibility and that way to pick up from that fallibility and learn from it and be a good person and be able to achieve these things. She shows that you can learn from your mistakes and still, prosper from it. And that's a great character to me. That is the definition of a great character, is that you watch this character fail, you come back from kind of just an abyss, from a brink of being just dark, and making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, learning from the biggest mistake, and becoming, a good person, pony. I don't know, however you want to phrase it, but that to me is the definition of a great character. So
100% agree.
There's not much I could say that you guys haven't already said or that we haven't already covered in this panel. I will say that I reused this image from last time because I love that image of Starlight walking away. Just such a great shot.
At some point, we'll need to talk about Starlight in the final couple of episodes and how we felt about that.
We could.
Right.
There's always room for a part 3. But I want to thank
everyone. I'm game for it.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank everyone in the audience and the chat. You guys are amazing. Thank you for sticking with us, especially with the technical difficulties at first. I want to thank each and every one of our co-panelists here. I'll give you a chance to plug yourselves. Of course, Miss Nova Rose, thank you for taking the journey inside our own home to be here.
As always.
And how can people get a hold of you?
I'm on Twitter at Nova Roselia.
Okay. And Taylor, thank you so much for joining us and providing just great commentary. And like I knew you would. I knew you would have no shortage of things to talk about with Starlight. So.
Yeah, you know what? Me being the rookie up here right now, I kind of now get a better grasp of how to handle a panel. So, Ford, I cannot thank you enough for allowing me to do this along with my good buddy here, Thoth. I'm also on Twitter. I'm the annoying also Starlight guy. So you can follow me at Kyle Bush 51fan2. You won't be disappointed, I assure you. It's just going to be full of glimmer and good content.
Indeed. And thank you, Mr. Half of Rift Ponies himself, Thoth Penswell for.
Is that my last name now?
We've done so much. We've done so many panels together that it's hard for me in the moment sometimes to think of new ways to introduce you.
It's true. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at @ThothPenswell. It's not really worth following. I don't really post too much interesting stuff. I kind of just post non sequitur anti-jokes because that's me, that's my style. And occasionally Starlight Glimmer things because she's great. If you would like really good content, though, you should follow @RiffPonies because we make funny horse noises and we do horse panels. We do pony comedy panels. We actually have one coming up in about an hour, 15 minutes. We're going to be working with some of the guests of honor. We're going to be making them read a script that we all put together. Should be pretty fun. And then at 11 p.m., we're going to be hosting some Jackbox After Dark. So I sit here being a co-panelist on a Glimmer panel, and still got more work to do this weekend, and so does Forward.
Oh yes, so you can find me on Twitter @KeepFriendMagic. If you like what we do, you can always support the Keeping Friendship Magic project. We have the podcast, which you can visit at kfm.buzzsprout.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Today, I just got news that you can listen to us on Pandora even now. So we're crossing bridges, making waves. If you want to support what we do, so we can afford to do more content, you can always support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/KFM. We have several panels coming up. I have 3 more tonight and 2 more tomorrow because I am literally insane. So I will be doing Jackbox again tonight with the After Dark crew. I would encourage you, if you're game, to stay up a little late. We've got about 4 hours of knockdown, drag out, awesome content so we've got the Jackbox going on. Right after Jackbox is My Little Tonight Show making its triumphant return with Brian Doe and Katrina Salisbury as our special guests, and we've got a lot of fun stuff planned. Right after that, we're going to go right into a late night version of Meme That Pony. I made this one here and that one below me make some special memes for the occasion, and we're just going to have some fun with it. Tomorrow, we've got a brand new Keeping Friendship Magic panel that I'll be presenting called The Midnight in Me. So if you've ever felt struggles with the voice in your head and self-esteem, this is the panel for it. And I have placed tissues here because I'm pretty convinced I might cry during it. So, so we'll see what happens. And tomorrow morning, we'll also have technically the Game Show of Corrections. We're going to do another round of it. So we had so much fun doing it last time.
That should be interesting.
Do it again. So that being said, thank you again to everyone. Love you all. Remember to keep friendship magic out there. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Yeah, this was great. By the way, someone's asking. I own 2 Starlight body pillows.
And with
Someone was asking.